You're now listening to Sanity at the Movies. Tomorrow
edition.
Tomorrow. Yes. You're now listening to Sanity at the... What am I trying to say? You're now listening to tomorrow's Sanity at the Movies today.
Oh.
Hey, everybody. Jake tricked us into watching The Tomorrow War, starring Chris Pratt, which was revenge for something. What did we do to Jake? We tricked him into watching something.
Oh, what was it?
Like, we were like, we have to watch this for the podcast. And then Jake watched it, and then we didn't end up doing that podcast or something.
Drunken Master.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
Yes, for our famed episode. One of the great moments in podcasting, Ramble in the Bronx.
Ramble in the Bronx.
So, as revenge for Ramble in the Bronx, Jake suggested, while he was on vacation, that you and I watch The Tomorrow War, starring Chris Pratt. And his reasoning was as follows. Even though this movie looks like utter garbage, even though the trailer is so boring that both me and Ben, independent of each other, attempted to watch it and turned off the trailer.
It's true.
It's you could make a better trailer out of this movie, just to be fair.
Definitely.
It's almost like the person that cut the trailer hated the movie or something like that. It is a exceptionally generic and boring trailer.
Yes, it is.
But in any case, me and Ben could not make it through this trailer. And the reason that we decided to do this movie was because, I guess, according to Jake, it's getting some press in kind of conservative Christian circles. Mm-hmm. I think this is in our Slack here. So I'll just take you through it. Jake's like, all the Christians on my feed are like, it's so wholesome. It's based on, it's so based. I don't know what he meant to say there. There is based slang for something.
I have no idea.
It's so wholesome. It's a beautiful depiction of masculinity and reconciliation and fatherhood. This is what I want lore TV to be. This is the art Christians should be making. Chris Pratt is my hero. And then Jake says, I'm not even exaggerating. And he links to some screenshots of, for example, one gentleman on Twitter saying, guys, I just saw The Tomorrow War, and I haven't felt that way watching a science fiction movie since Independence Day or Jurassic Park. It's a beautiful picture of biblical manhood, reconciliation, and fatherhood. Chris Pratt is my hero. So that's one. And then there was this other one. Just watch The Tomorrow War on Prime. Turns out it was produced by Chris Pratt as well as starring him. It's surprisingly good and wholesome. Turn that one up a few more points on the based scale. I guess based is a thing.
Oh, no, hold on.
Bassett? Am I saying it wrong?
No, it must be some kind of typo, but what could it be?
Based, slang.
Okay. I have no idea.
Based is a slang term that originally meant to be addicted to crack cocaine, but was reclaimed by rapper Lil B for being yourself and not caring what others think of you. So I guess if this movie cared less what people thought of it. And that's what makes me excited about lore TV.
Based means being yourself, not being scared of what people think about you.
Okay, so This guy's saying this movie was great. Maybe turn it up a few more points so that it's even less concerned about what people think of it. Yeah, people would.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and say I disagree with those takes.
Yeah.
1,000%. This movie is in no way anything that. I mean, it's just fine. Whatever. It's not. I wouldn't say it's an evil movie or anything like that. But no. It's not a new rallying cry for conservative filmmaking, nor does Chris Pratt strike me as any kind of legitimate Christian or anyone to emulate. He certainly allows lots of blaspheming of God's name and other vulgarity into his movie, if nothing else, which is not something that I hope Lore TV will be all that interested in doing. Mm-hmm. So if this is the standard for Lore TV, then that would be a very sad state of affairs for Lore TV. Mm-hmm. Because this is not, let's just get this out of the way. The entire reason that me and Ben had to sit through this thing was to see if they actually snuck a Christian conservative movie past big Hollywood. My friends, they did not. They did not.
I mean, they snuck a pretty pro-dad movie or whatever, I guess.
Yeah, but
no,
whatever. We can't be so insecure about our value system that anything that smacks of fatherhood or masculinity or anything like that, we're just gonna roll out the red carpet. Like, yay, somebody likes fatherhood. We can't be so insecure. Fatherhood's actually built into the universe. It's who God is, and it's who he made men to be. It's pretty inescapable, even in bad, schlocky movies. Even in Wonder Woman 1984 had a nice little subplot where the Mandalorian reconnected with his daughter. So, I award this movie absolutely no points for having the theme of fatherhood or the theme of reconciliation. That just means that Hollywood and Chris Pratt exist in a world where they still want to make movies that are somewhat entertaining, and therefore they have to draw on things that God built into the universe. They get 0 points.
Zero points.
Would you like to argue for a few points? Would you like to be more generous?
It did have a couple of things in the second act that made me cry. It's not that I really wanted to cry. I just did.
Oh, me too. I mean, look, I just had a daughter, so the movie's all about like father-daughter stuff. So
a la Interstellar, right?
Yeah, a la very Interstellar.
Yeah, including the Boom Boom soundtrack.
Yeah,
or the Rumble Rumble soundtrack, I guess.
Well, I think, by the way, this conversation may be somewhat scattershot, but I think, by the way, an easy way to, if you want to have a father story, but you don't want the evil Hollywood people to be like, we need to be more progressive. Father-daughter story is a pretty good way to do that, because that way you can have a strong, independent female lead who's sort of being mentored or held up by the father figure. And the actual based choice would be to tell a father-son story, but they weren't going to do that because they're a bunch of lily-livered Hollywood cowards that wouldn't know actual morality if it hit them in the face. So, yeah, Christians, those tweets are dumb. I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't say who they were, and maybe people can figure it out, but I just think that's dumb. It makes me kind of mad. Like, we can't be so insecure about God's truth that we're just willing to be like, yay! Someone made a movie with one diluted molecule that you could maybe look under a 9,000 volt microscope and see that there was some truth in it.
I mean, if it had some profoundly good writing about fatherhood and stuff, you give it more points. But the fact is, the writing in this movie is mostly mediocre.
No, it's mostly like, look over there, and
right. I mean, it ranges from bad to mediocre with a few good moments, and the craft of the filmmaking is only pretty good. And of all the acting, Chris Pratt might be the worst in the movie, actually. Like, he's not good in this movie.
Yeah, no, he has a early to mid-career Keanu thing going on where he thinks squinting equates to acting, into emotion.
Looking around like, whoa.
So he basically just goes through the movie because he's in serious Pratt mode, which is one of the worst Pratt modes. I mean, I'm not big comedy Pratt either, but he just looks constipated the whole time because that's how he does, like, oh, I really care about my daughter. He kind of pinches his eyes in and tenses his body. Yep. He just goes through the whole movie with a constipated face, and it's not particularly charming or endearing or anything.
I mean, also, okay, if this is a movie about fatherhood, then it's a movie about how good fathers raise their daughters to be their commanders in the army. You know, I mean, let's just take it all the way. You take this movie seriously, fine. Good dads should tell their daughters to be colonels. Good dads should tell their daughters to be words I'm not going to say on this podcast. Good dads should teach their daughters to, like, trample on the boys on their way up the ladder, wherever.
To be men.
Yep.
Well, and good dads should teach their daughters to... I just completely lost my train of thought. Good dads... Maybe if I just say the same phrase again, the thought will occur to me.
Maybe.
Good dads should teach their daughters to... Nope. It's gone.
It's gone.
Folks. Just like...
maybe it'll come back.
Yeah, maybe it'll come back.
Maybe. Yeah. And I don't know. Except for a few good scenes in the second act or whatever, it's mostly, I don't know. It's not high quality drama. It's not, and it's pretty cheap. And you have an actor, the girl who plays his daughter when she's grown up and in charge of all the men, who's better than this material. And if you think about her, or any of the major plot points of this movie too much, if you think of her as the kernel of the whole rest of armed humanity, then actually she's not good at that role because they don't ever show her playing that role because she doesn't command squat. What she does is emote with her dad and do some lab stuff and shoot guns.
Right.
But she does not. The movie doesn't even give you context for her being the all powerful, hard nosed remaining kernel of remaining humanity. Anyway, it's not a very good movie. It's not very well thought out. The drama is not that well thought out. It's very cheap. Everything about it is all the writing, all the thinking is cheap. Right. There's only some acting that's not cheap, and it's not Chris Pratt's acting.
Right.
I don't know how to say it, but it's just like these are just cobbled together bits of been there, done that, with a little good acting, a fun, good monster design, which we can talk about, and some pretty cool action scenes.
Yeah. Well, so let's take a step back. If people don't know what we're talking about, which presumably in 6 months they won't because nobody will remember this, there was, in 2021, a movie called The Tomorrow War, starring Chris Pratt. It was meant for theatrical release, but Amazon scooped it up in the midst of the COVID pandemic, if you remember that. And so the movie did not get a big theatrical release, but it was quite popular on streaming because Pratt is one of a handful of people that can still just command an audience. Like he's a real old school star of whom we have less and less and less, where people will see a thing just because Chris Pratt's in it. That's a guarantee of entertainment. And so this was a sci-fi dystopian military shoot 'em up, kind of alien shoot 'em up action movie that everybody streamed, and it was like the biggest streaming thing in all the world when it came out.
People streamed to it.
People streamed to it, exactly. It was directed, once again, I'm laying all this pipe because this podcast is going to last longer than this movie. That's what I'm relying on here in people's memories. People will want to listen to this podcast. They'll be like, what was The Tomorrow War? Is that some art film that Nathan and Ben want to recommend to me? No. It's directed by a gentleman named Chris McKay, who co-directed the animation on the Lego movie and made his feature film directorial debut with the Lego Batman movie. So you'd think a very clever, subversive guy from the Phil Lord, Chris Miller school of schlocky meta action stuff. But based on this, a very self-serious,
not so clever,
generic kind of
meta schlocky action stuff. I mean, it's I guess not even meta, is it?
There's not much that's meta. I mean, there's a couple little moments, and
there's a couple lines. When they're first looking out over the dystopian landscape destroyed by aliens. What does the comic relief character say?
Will Smith should be here.
It's too bad Will Smith didn't live to see this.
Right. Yeah. There's stuff like that. That's just silly. You can't make a movie without having a sprinkling of that kind of meta commentary. It doesn't really amount to having any kind of metatextual point of view on the material. This is a very generic and old-fashioned kind of a story. So for people who don't know, for the future, we're making this podcast for future generations who want to remember this little remembered pop culture artifact. The story is a schlocky time travel story where, I don't know, Ben, why don't you explain the premise of this movie?
Oh, fine. Humanity is shocked. I think I'm just almost quoting the whatever marketing material. Humanity is shocked when army people arrive from the future and say, 30 years from now, humanity is almost extinct. We're fighting alien monsters, and we need to recruit you, our parents and grandparents, to come back to the future with us and fight these monsters because everyone's almost dead and you're our only hope. We don't have enough people left to fight in this war. And then, that happens, and you get a quick series of badly done newsreel flashes and use of dumb, clunky use of stock footage.
Exceptionally bad. Your average Hollywood movie is better at this kind of thing.
Oh man. And just newscasters saying important things about how the world has changed, which you can pull off well. It's fine. It's a trope. But this was just boring and dumb. And not believable.
Yeah, really boring and dumb, and the news doesn't really look like real news. No. This movie had some of the cheesiest and worst, really just bad TV movie style table setting that I think I've ever seen in a movie intended for
theatrical release. It's hard for me to
release.
imagine this in theatrical release. It just does not feel like it's professional enough.
Yeah, you almost wonder if COVID hit at the right time, that they just didn't finish it, or didn't, they didn't have the money to quite put the finishing touches on some things, because there's some stuff that's just very, very lame.
It's pretty lame. And so, whatever, that happens, the world changes, people start getting drafted, and then, shockingly, Chris Pratt is drafted, and his wife is tearful, and he's going to have to leave their 9-year-old girl behind, and he talks some with his estranged dad just to tell you that, hey, there is an estranged dad, and Chris Pratt's not going to forgive him for the things that he did.
The estranged dad, by the way, played by the great J.K. Simmons.
Who's awesome and who elevates this stuff.
He is very much wasted by the movie, but also J.K. Simmons is just always fun to watch. So
he's a lot of fun.
He brings a lot of charm to a nothing part and to nothing dialogue.
Yep. And then Chris Pratt goes into the future. Mm-hmm. And there's a terrible accident, and they get dropped from way high up onto some skyscrapers. And when they get teleported into the future, and then they some of them survive this big city monster hunt chase action scene, which is pretty fun. And they meet the commanding officer of at least the armies of the United States, I guess, and it's his daughter.
It's Chris Pratt's daughter.
And the movie doesn't try to hide that from you. To its credit, it just like it tells you very quickly. Mm-hmm. This is not a secret. This is, I'm your daughter, and you realize that the daughter, like, there's something. Chris Pratt must have done something wrong in the past because the daughter acts a little strange.
Well, and I guess if you wanted to watch this movie, this would be the place to stop listening to the podcast, because we'll get into it more. But basically, then a bunch of generic stuff happens that is exactly what you'd expect. So the daughter's like, you weren't a good dad, and you left us for some reason that's not really established in the movie, besides we know that you wanted a little bit more for your life. And
I mean, I feel like the idea was supposed to be that Chris Pratt just followed in his own dad's footsteps. His dad was a war vet who, we learned this in his backstory stuff, a war vet who, because of the trauma of war, left his family because he didn't know how to deal with his anger and violence.
Right.
And the idea seems to be Chris Pratt would be the same thing, coming back from his brutal stint in the Tomorrow War. He would leave his family because stuff.
But in her timeline, wasn't it before the Tomorrow War didn't happen, actually?
No, that's not it. It's like he came back from, this is my remembrance of what she said. He came back from a stint in the war and was not able to deal emotionally with his family, so he left them. And so she grew up into this do-it-yourself colonel person, I guess.
Well, there were certain neurons in my brain that I just never fired up because I didn't think that the movie deserved them. So it's possible that you captured more of the plot than I did.
I think so. I think I'll give the movie that much credit. It has a little bit of it, dramatic structure or whatever.
I want to at least allow for the possibility that there's a timeline where, for no particular reason that the movie cares to explain, Chris Pratt just went bad. And
I don't think so.
The movie's that sloppy, though. You'll give me that.
It's sloppy.
It's that sloppy in other places.
Yeah.
Although we were making fun of its time travel conceit, and then it managed to close some loops there.
But it's sloppy in the color by numbers way. It's at least going to put out the piece that you color by numbers,
right.
So I think that I'm right.
Yeah, you could be. Either way, it's pretty generic, and
it's pretty generic.
It's actually, though, you begin to see why this movie got made in the first place. You begin to imagine the pitch where the screenwriter or whoever went in and said to the executives, I want to make this movie. And what he no doubt said is, let's make Aliens or Independence Day meets It's a Wonderful Life, which is an awesome conceit, actually. So Chris Pratt basically gets to see one version of his life through all the time travel mechanics, and then he gets to do it better.
Right.
But all within the schlocky, shoot 'em up, aliens are going to eat us genre. And I think that's a pretty fun combo, actually.
Yeah, that's pretty fun.
I can imagine a really great and moving and fun action movie made with those basic materials.
Yeah.
And this movie, even like if we were to just describe its plot, you could imagine a really good version of that plot, but it just doesn't have the imagination or the willingness to actually ask real questions of its characters or write real dialogue or just even have fun with. The one place, as you alluded to earlier, where it does have fun is with the action scenes. And I had fun with the action scenes. I thought the action scenes were a lot of fun. I was expecting these aliens to be very generic because I really don't think anyone's designed a good alien since H.R. Geiger in the Sigourney Weaver alien movies. That's a wonderful alien. But so much of what we've seen since then has just been, it's another slimy kind of insect creature.
Right.
And so you have various kinds of slimy insect creatures. You have the Independence Day alien, which is a pretty blatant one-to-one ripoff, but is pretty well done. Mm-hmm. And then you have just boring aliens like the ones in Quiet Place. And I would say these aliens, while still following them, you also have all the bad shoot-'em-up aliens in Marvel movies.
Oh yeah, so boring.
The army that Loki brings in Avengers 1.
Those guys. Oh yeah.
Well, and then the Thanos ones are even more boring.
Those are just like alien dogs or something, but they're pretty boring.
Yeah, Marvel has had at least 2, maybe 3 or 4 examples of here's the enemy soldiers, and they're just kind of slimy, boring alien creatures that we can kill without feeling bad. And these aliens threatened, I thought were going to be that boring. But they do just enough to distinguish them, actually. They're white, and they have these creepy red skull faces, and they move a little bit more like cats. They're a little bit more graceful, and
they have these tentacle things that shoot spikes. And
yeah, I actually thought the aliens were fun. And anytime anybody was shooting an alien or putting a saw to an alien or putting a pickaxe in an alien or throwing a grenade at an alien, I was having a lot of fun with this movie. Yeah. And if you like seeing aliens get shot or pickaxed or sawed.
There's plenty of alien gore.
There's plenty of that kind of thing.
That doesn't really, I don't like gore, but it doesn't really bother me because it's aliens.
Yeah, it's just like green goop.
Yeah,
kind of like
basically.
Killing a big insect or something.
Yeah, that's right. It's like killing bugs.
So if you enjoy that kind of thing, I think, and you're willing to just completely shut off your brain and sit through some pretty boring and contrived family drama stuff, you can have fun with this movie. I actually had a lot of fun with this movie. It was fun. I mean, it was a good movie to watch with friends. You know, I'm glad me and Ben actually watched this one together and got to laugh at it together instead of the deadly evening wasted with our wives individually watching this movie.
No.
You could throw this on at a sleepover or a party or something like that and
absolutely
have fun with it.
Yeah.
And maybe a certain generation of it will remember it with the same fondness that I remember Independence Day. Although I doubt it, because it seems to me, maybe it's just nostalgia, but it seems to me that Independence Day, for all its schlockiness and all its obviousness, was a much better constructed.
It's much better schlock
story. Yeah,
it's much better schlock.
Yeah,
it just sets up clear character beats and funny, likable characters. I mean, I think that I would absolutely hate Independence Day if I had to go back and watch it now. I just don't know if I could do it, but.
Mm-hmm. I think we probably have to do it for this very podcast at some point.
Oh, no.
Which would be interesting.
Oh, I don't think it will be, actually. But sure, maybe we will. Well, yeah. For what this is, and for the generation of 13-year-old boys who will like it, I don't know. It's not as good as Independence Day was for us.
Well, I wish it was simpler, actually. Like, let's just strip away some of the fake emotion that's not going to land. Although, again, because of the time of my life, I'm soft enough touch with father-daughter stuff and just father stuff in general that this movie did get me, but that doesn't mean that it earned it, and it doesn't mean I was happy that it got me.
Yeah.
But I'd say strip away that stuff, just make a simple alien shoot 'em up that just got to the action scenes quicker and got it all done in 90 to 100 minutes instead of the interminable 2 hours and 14 minutes of this movie. This movie has like a whole... The way it's set up, there's like the end, and then it revs back up for
a third act.
It basically has a 3-act structure, but then there's a 4th act that's actually the real 3rd act, and it's just.
I thought that. So what? Wait, first act was just the whole setup for him going into the war.
So if this was just a simple schlocky 90-minute alien shoot 'em up, then I think it would work. Part 1 is setup. Part 2 is the city fight and everything that kind of introduces him to his daughter and the problem. And then part 3 is we've solved this problem. They're attacking our base. We need to kill the queen, end of movie. And so this movie does all of that. And then Chris Pratt, spoiler alert, makes it back to the original timeline.
Yeah.
And then has to gear up, build a team, go fight the aliens.
Well,
again,
that second third act is the best part of the movie.
Yeah.
it's the most interesting. It has the best parts of dialogue and acting because of his grown-up daughter. The stuff that lands emotionally, the stuff that you're like, oh yeah, I could see this being a good movie. Even if in someone's hands who was a genius, it could either be what Nathan said, the 90-minute schlock fest, or it could be like, okay, you have an emotional heart and you can make it work. And if someone knew how to streamline it, you could actually have a third act that was fun.
Oh yeah,
like you could have a second act with all that buildup, and you could make the audience feel like all that buildup and letdown was totally deliberate.
Right.
And like, now we want the rest of the movie, and you'd feel like, oh, we get the rest of the movie, instead of like, oh man, we get 40 more minutes of movie. Oh my goodness.
Well, the template for these kinds of movies, the ultimate sort of thing that all these movies are referencing on is James Cameron's Aliens. And that is a movie that does that sort of thing very well. It's like, she's made it out, but then she has to go back for the little girl, and then the queen's going to come out,
Yeah.
But that just feels like a good roller coaster ride where it's like, oh, we thought we were slowing down, but oh no, we're going up this other hill. I mean, that's just like the 80s action movie formula that you can do really well.
Yep.
But these days, it all feels so formless. Like, it just feels like we're being pummeled. Like any given moment could be the climax, and for some reason this one is. That said, there's a really fun action scene in the city when Chris Pratt first shows up.
Yep.
And then there's another fun action scene with some helicopters, and then there's a really fun ending kind of boss battle with the alien queen, and you get to see J.K. Simmons and Chris Pratt double team a big alien monster, and it's a lot of fun.
It's fun.
So, just as like a totally brainless action movie, I enjoyed this. I wish it, as we've already said, I wish it either had an actual brain or didn't think it had a brain and was willing to just be brainless and quick. But instead, it tried to kind of split the difference and failed.
Boy, did it.
What else is there to say about this thing?
Oh, I don't know. It's clumsy on so many levels. Just, I don't know.
We always talk about setup and payoff and things like that in an action scene. If you want to see a movie that doesn't particularly do that well, so that you can begin to maybe by seeing the bad example, begin to understand what we're talking about, watch this movie. There's any number of moments where there's things that just kind of happen. Like, for example, Chris Pratt's friend has a saw all of a sudden. I'm not sure where that saw came from.
I don't know where it came from.
And it's so much more satisfying if it's like, we have a saw. And then the saw comes back and he's using the saw. Like, that's right. That's classic filmmaking. But this is more just like, another thing is happening. He's got a saw. There's just a lot of stuff like that where you're like, oh, he has this device, or oh, this person got killed, or oh, this person is still alive, where you're just like kind of confused because they haven't really built, they're not doing visual storytelling during the action beats.
Yeah. Yep.
We've often discussed the Bourne movies and whether they were good or bad for cinema, and whether they were good or bad in and of themselves. One thing you cannot accuse them of not doing is, or let me say that less confusingly, the Bourne movies, whether you like their chaotic style or not, they do tell a story within that style.
That's right.
And you do know what's happening with the story. You know who's alive, who's dead, who's trying to do what, when. You may not always understand the details of everything.
Right.
But you have a big picture. This movie is actually much easier to follow in terms of its visual style, but it's less easy to follow because the director is not actually feeding you information when and where you need it in order to understand what's going on. There was any number of times where our group was like, oh, is that person still alive, or did that person just die, or why is she sacrificing herself? Oh, it's because,
she got hurt. So
right. You could usually piece it together, and one person would have noticed one thing, but we weren't all just being swept along by a filmmaker who knew what he was doing.
Nope. Yep. And then even individual things are just not, I don't know, scene to scene. There's any number of clumsy choices or just boring choices that this director makes.
Right.
Whether it's, here's this side character with a dark outlook on life who's gonna be redeemed and sacrifice himself in the end, and it's not gonna be that interesting, actually.
Right.
And even there's unforgivable clumsiness at the level of giving you a sense of that all that's happening in the movie, this whole future war operation, is under someone's command and being carried out in any way that makes sense and in any way that anyone could follow,
right?
Whether they're on the inside or the outside. And you never ever are given the sense that there's a clear chain of command, that the world's governments are working together, which the movie says is happening. But it's so stupid. It's just like, you don't believe that any of this is happening. You don't believe that the present world is really being torn apart by all these people going to die in a future war. You don't really believe in the tomorrow world having some clear world command center. You're never shown anything like that. It's just a bunch of Americans running around and women bossing everyone around, and who's actually in charge and who's doing what, and I don't know. It's just stupid. It just doesn't give you any context for anything. The only thing that there really is action hero Chris Pratt and whoever he happens to be with, and that's all that you ever believe is really happening. Mm-hmm. So, fail movie. Big fail.
Yeah. It's a bad movie. It's a bad movie. I mean, again, I'm sorry, but shame on the Christians who liked this because it had one diluted iota of something that vaguely corresponded to something that they think might be a value that they have. I mean, laziness is something that the scripture doesn't have a lot of patience for. This movie evinces and evokes laziness all over the place. In other words, we don't forgive bad art just because it has good values. We also don't think that something has good values just because it nods its head once or twice at a value that we happen to like, while kind of spitting all over a lot of, I'm using the word values, by the way, kind of sarcastically. It's a stupid, meaningless word. It's been neutered by our current society, but you know what I mean. Morals, ethics. Mm-hmm. And Chris Pratt is the slimiest of them all. I really can't stand that guy because he's got this brand as kind of, he's the conservative Christian in Hollywood.
Right.
He makes things for a family audience. And if all you had was he allows God's name to be blasphemed any number of times in his fun alien shoot 'em up movie, if that was the only thing you had, I still think that would be enough to say, oh, okay, well, this guy doesn't care about the things of God. That's just his brand.
Yeah.
But you have a lot more than that, I mean, he apparently doesn't have any problem with feminism and with women bossing everybody around in his movies, just ad nauseum, just so boringly and overwhelmingly and stupidly.
Well, let's also just real quick talk about the missing dramatic part of the movie, which is ostensibly, this is a movie, I mean, the main plot heart is obviously, or the main tension is, can the humans beat the aliens in this future war? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then you've got a setup of this family with an estranged dad, Chris Pratt's estranged dad. And then you've got no showing, but only telling about Chris Pratt's central dramatic failure. Mm-hmm. That's off screen. It's not anywhere in the script except as telling. His daughter tells him, one day you will fail me and mom and leave us and abandon us. And so it's like, Chris Pratt seems like a pretty good dad and husband. He goes to the future. He's told that one day he's not going to be that. Mm-hmm. He decides not to be that. You never see him be that. Yay, fatherhood redeemed.
Right.
No, you didn't tell me the story of anything about fatherhood redeemed. You just told me the story of an okay dad who kept being kind of an okay, clueless dad. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's all that you did. And you gestured towards this idea of the failures of fatherhood, which is a deep subject. And you get the only emotional payoff of any kind you get is through J.K. Simmons acting. But even that is not enough. Actually, there's no emotional payoff for that at all. There's zero. J.K. Simmons is simply fun. He has a backstory of being a dad who abandoned his sons. For a movie that actually talks about a failed father who stunk and who gets some redemption, see Warrior, a much better movie with plenty of objectionable language and stuff. But
wonderful movie, though.
Wonderful movie. It will make you cry if you're not a cold person with the heart of stone. And
we were sobbing. I mean, it was very, very powerful.
It earns it. It's a movie about fathers and brothers. And it does a really good job of capturing masculinity and men's temptations to abandon their responsibility in a family and what it takes to bring them back. And there's all kinds of stuff that it actually does in the script and shows you and makes you feel this movie is just like, here, placeholder for that stuff. Mm-hmm. Family values. I'm your dude. Let's shoot some aliens. Let's not think too hard about whether or not I ever portrayed either fatherhood or its failures. And the fact is, Chris Pratt, you didn't portray either for me in this movie. Not either one.
Well, one thing where I think people are far too quick in the Christian world to award points is, how do I explain this? So if somebody said they loved pizza, they supported pizza, they thought pizza was great, but then their definition of pizza was a bunch of carrots on a bed of cabbage, we would not think that however much this person talked about pizza, their definition of pizza differs from what we know pizza to be. So we do not think of this person as pro pizza. If a movie is all about, yay, fatherhood, but it doesn't actually know what a father is or what a father does, then it's not pro fatherhood. And here's what dads do. Dads say no. Dads have authority. And this movie doesn't even nod to that. It's not Chris Pratt needs to get his act together so that he can love and discipline his daughter. He just sort of needs to support her dreams. It's the same plot as like a Cheaper by the Dozen. Steve Martin needs to show up for the family, the kid when he's performing at the school dance or whatever. Steve Martin needs to be there. He needs to not worry so much about his job. This movie, same things. Like dads should be there. That's about as deep as it goes. Dads are, if you were going to define fatherhood based on, like, if you were an alien and all you had to go on was this movie, what would you think a dad was? I submit to you, Ben and dear listener, that you would not be able to piece together a good working definition of fatherhood based on anything that you see in movie. Yeah, maybe that's not fair. You'd see it's a guy that sacrifices, a guy that should be there for you. Mm-hmm. That's not enough. That's not, to use my pizza analogy, we haven't gotten to cheese and tomato and dough yet. We haven't gotten into the meat of what fathers do. And so it is super lame for Christians to be like, Chris Pratt said the word fatherhood and said, fatherhood is good. And so, yay, we like that too. Are you defining it the same way that Chris Pratt and his team of Hollywood hacks is defining it? No, you shouldn't. I mean, if you are, then your idea of fatherhood is completely neutered and you need to rethink it. But if you're not, like you shouldn't be, then this movie is not going to feed your soul in the way that you are proclaiming on Twitter that it does.
Well, it kind of makes me wish that this episode was just a double feature with Mitchell's versus the Machines, another movie about a father-daughter combo saving the world in a kind of a apocalyptic showdown, in this case between them and robots. No time travel involved. And Mitchell's versus the Machines is a more evil movie. It's also much better made. Mm-hmm. And it is a kid's movie
that your
Lord
kids
should
Miller,
not
right?
watch. Yeah,
so
that's right.
Same team.
Same. Yeah, part of the same team. And it's very well animated. It's very well put together. It's clever. I mean, I'm not saying I enjoyed it some, at least, just in that way. And it's also, and it's even uglier, but it's a much more explicit moral about, you know what, Dad, what you're not doing is supporting my dreams. And that's what you're here to do. And in that movie, the daughter, it comes out in the script that, see what I did there, that the daughter is a lesbian, which she's, what word did I, she's coded lesbian at the beginning of the movie. And they make you wonder just a little, like, are we saying she's a lesbian? Then at the end of the movie, you hear about her girlfriend at college. But by that point, her dad has already signed on to everything that she is. And he's supporting her just like he ought to have the whole time. And he's not being a fool like he was by not supporting her. And so this movie isn't quite that level of explicit, let's support our daughter's evil and call it good.
No, but I think the same assumptions
go into it.
Yeah, the same framework is there.
That's right.
It's just a more neutered, family-friendly version, which is all Chris Pratt does, is take things that are evil or themes that are otherwise anemic and present a version that's watered down enough that it can have supposed mass appeal.
Yep.
But I mean, really, honestly, just a decadent Hollywood jerk I have so much more respect for. Jack Nicholson, you always knew he was just the devil. He just had a big grin on his face because he loved to sin. And that's not a good thing. Hollywood is a wicked place in many ways, but at least you knew where you stood with some of these guys. Chris Pratt is such a piece of slime. I mean, the more I think about him, he is such a liar.
You're making me hate him.
Yeah.
I mean, I did, just to correlate this a little bit more, listener, there's this scene where Chris Pratt goes in to get tested for his candidacy as a soldier for the future war, and take off your shirt, And so, of course, he has to take off his shirt and show off his bulging muscles. And, okay, it's not family friendly, actually.
Mm-hmm.
That is not family friendly, as it happens. That's just normal Hollywood using sex appeal to sell your movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. And someone who was godly and concerned about fatherhood would know that was not honoring God or displaying fatherhood.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is that hard to understand?
Yeah. Someone who was godly and honoring fatherhood would know that just the optics of having a bunch of women yelling at men and being the drill sergeant characters throughout the movie, and having the one sort of male authority figure be this really cheap portrait that's only barely sketched in of a venal bureaucrat that lies to the public.
Right.
That's not supporting the cause of fatherhood. It's not that you can't tell complicated stories about sinners and broken people and all that, but we haven't even begun to really establish that there is such a thing as fatherhood in the Tomorrow verse.
Oh, man.
I mean, it's just... Well, and there's something... We talked about this a little bit in our epic Ramble in the Bronx episode that everyone should be listening to right now. And I'm sure across the world, there are many people listening to Ramble in the Bronx, even as we speak, and being inspired, moved, and informed by it.
Probably.
But we talked about Jackie Chan always plays such a likable, lovable buffoon of a man who is innocent, basically. Mm-hmm. And then he's the producer of the movie, and he always makes sure to include some smut and some bad guys who are sexually motivated and some girls that are getting their clothes ripped off or whatever it is. And you realize, Jackie Chan's actually not a nice, innocent guy. If he's if he has control over these movies, and A, if he's willing to star in them, even if he doesn't have control, B, if, as we know, he's a producer on these things and has a lot of control, it's like, oh no, he just plays that character because it's attractive for him to play that character. But he's just as monstrous as anybody. Chris Pratt, exact same thing. He appears in these depraved Guardians of the Galaxy movies. He appears in
Jurassic World.
Jurassic World. And it's like he's surrounded by things that do not honor God, over which he has plenty of control. And then his character kind of is innocent and it's like, no, how dumb are we? Pretty dumb. Because,
I am.
Because people do, well, humanity has embraced Pratt as something of a conservative hero, I think, which is just ridiculous. I mean, he abandoned the wife of his... Here, I was willing to go out on a limb with Pratt and say maybe he means it when he was still with Anna Faris, the wife of his youth. I'm always willing to... The one thing that a Hollywood celebrity or a celebrity of any kind can do to impress me is stay with their first wife. It's one reason why I always want to cut Stephen King a little slack, because he's still with his wife of 50 years or something, 60 years. I'm always impressed by that. It's kind of sad, I guess, that I would be impressed by... They did the basically human and decent thing, but I'm always willing to say, okay, maybe that person actually has some of the decency that they put up on screen if they're a one-woman man. But Chris Pratt's not that. He's divorced and, turned his wife in for a younger model. So am I portraying the relationship between Pratt and Anna Faris with all the nuance that it probably deserved? No, but I don't care. And so I just don't have any respect for this guy at all. And I don't think that you should either, listener. And I say that as someone who, as an adult that enjoys such things, does have a certain begrudging respect for the Guardians of the Galaxy films and the artistry that goes into them. The perverse genius of James Gunn has an element of real genius to it, but it also has a lot of perversity to it.
James Gunn also managed to get a much better performance out of Chris Pratt in those movies than this Chris McKay gets out of him in this movie.
Chris Pratt's very bad in this movie.
He's particularly really bad.
Yeah, he just looks constipated the whole time. Like I said, like he's just, I mean, he does. I will say this in all fairness, Chris Pratt does have a movie star quality. He is, even in a bad performance, very watchable. He's not a zero on the screen. He draws your attention. And that is ultimately the one thing that you need from a hero. I mean, ideally, you need a lot more in a movie like this. But Chris Pratt does have whatever that charisma is, whatever that X factor is that makes a movie star. He does have that. So he's not without a certain God-given talent or something like that. Like he is able to anchor this movie. But also, as he anchors it, he's pretty boring.
You know, I feel a little curious now. I don't know if I'm curious enough to ever watch this, but there's another father-daughter time travel movie that came out in the past year that was actually, I heard, was supposed to be good. And I don't know if it was actually good, but Bill and Ted 3. And I know that I would like watching Keanu Reeves do this kind of stuff more than Chris Pratt.
I mean, I always enjoyed the Bill and Ted movies back in the day, so I have been tempted to watch that, but it's never appeared on any streaming platform that I subscribe to or anything like that.
Oh, well, maybe someday, maybe not.
When a movie that you're watching makes you long for Bill and Ted, then that movie is not
very good.
Its job.
No.
I don't know. Maybe
Indeed not.
Is there anything else to say? I feel bad even giving this movie that much time. Like, here we are. We knew it was going to be bad. We watched it. It was bad, and we're here to report to you.
I don't know. This episode has been more about the way that conservative people need to stop buying into hype like this. That's really what it's about. It's not so much about this movie, I don't think, as it is about, like, people think about who Chris Pratt is. Think about the messaging of the movie. Think about whether it actually shows you anything that you that you're happy it tells you it's showing you.
Right.
You know, be concerned on some level about, I mean, for a piece of art of any kind to have a decent message, it has to be well made enough to have that message, for one thing. But then it also just has to actually have that message.
Right.
And so neither on the level of quality craftsmanship nor on the level of the actual message of the movie does this movie deliver.
Right.
So what is there to it except fun scenes of shooting cat bug aliens?
Right. Which are fun. Again, if you're
sure, watch it for that.
Cynical hipster that's can enjoy it on that level with your friends, then
just don't be impressed that it was about fathers.
Yeah, okay. I just came up with a better metaphor than obviously probably the greatest metaphor that's ever been put to podcast was my pizza metaphor.
Oh yeah, I just remembered that you made that metaphor a thing.
But I think I can top it.
Whoa, you can top the pizza metaphor.
I think I can top it.
That's pretty great.
I think I can top it. I think I can top the pizza metaphor. It's Monopoly money, right? They're like, "Hey, would you like $1,000?" And you're like, "Sure." And then the pagan Hollywood gives you, Mr. Christian, $1,000 of Monopoly money. And then instead of being like, "You idiot, this is a counter fraud money. You can't say this is money." We as Christians are sometimes like, "Hey, $1,000. Cool." This is morally what this, hey, you like fatherhood, right? Here's some fatherhood. And then they give you fraudulent, fake fatherhood. And we're like, "Hey, we do like fatherhood. Thanks, Hollywood." It's Monopoly money morality. There's your metaphor.
Yeah. And if the movie is crass, well, it's not as crass as other Hollywood movies. If it takes God's name in vain, well, not as much as other Hollywood movies. And they gave me all this fake Monopoly money. So definitely give it a pass on anything objectionable.
Not just a pass, but a recommendation. I mean, that's the thing. If people were just like, it's pretty stupid and it's morally bankrupt, but if you like aliens getting shot, then I suppose it's harmless enough for a Friday night with the guys. That would be one thing.
That would be one thing.
But the fact that there's actually people out there who are like, "Yay, finally, like, I hope this is what lore TV can be." It's just, what a crock. What a crock.
Yep, that was a better metaphor. You're right.
Yes, I managed to top the pizza metaphor. Monopoly, money, morality. Look for that Sound of Sanity episode very soon. And another one of Nathan's sad attempts to try and get one of these phrases.
Let's make it mimetic. Mimetic, right? Isn't that mimetic?
Mimetic, yeah.
Is that an actual adjective? I feel like it might be.
I think it is.
Not mimetic, like M-I-M-E-T. Not memorable. No. Mimetic is imitative. Memetic is memorable.
Yes. There's definitely a word like that. Memetic is the study
Entering
of
into the culture
based on an analogy with Darwinian.
Oh dear.
Wikipedia is so dumb. In any case, I have seen memetics. Yes, the study of memes. There
you go.
So memetic, yeah. Yes. But the eternal quest of Nathan to make one of his podcasts be memetic. But, that's a better quest than any quest that Chris Pratt's ever gone on. Is there anything else to say about this movie?
Oh, you know what? This could get us in trouble. So I'm going to name, let's see. I just feel like naming a couple movies that are about actual masculinity. They're not movies I can simply recommend, and I'm not. I'm just saying they're artistically well-made movies about actual So we did kind of recommend Warrior.
Warrior, yeah.
I think Warrior is the clear, we could almost recommend this to you. Language warning, lots of F-bombs, probably lots of taking God's name in vain.
And lots of violence. It's like in the ring violence, but if you don't like seeing humans crunch against other humans, then you won't enjoy it.
If you like boxing movies, or if you at least tolerate that, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Other movies that are about masculinity that I don't recommend you watch are still actual movies about, I don't know that they're about fatherhood, maybe Nathan will just cut this out of the podcast. Maybe it's useless, but they are The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford.
That is Coward Ford.
Coward Robert Ford. It's a actually pretty genius movie about men.
It's beautiful. It's been a long time since I've seen it.
Yeah, it was amazing.
For all I remember, it has a long, gross bordello scene or something like that. But if so, I don't remember it.
It doesn't. There's dialogue and innuendo, but there's not, as I recall, there's nothing like that. And then Into the Furnace, Christian Bale movie. Again, not really about fatherhood, but it is about masculinity and trying to take responsibility and kind of failing. And I don't know. It just made me think of movies with insight into human nature, into what it means to be a man, into how to fail at being a man. Those movies have some actual insight and they have some craft.
Right.
And I don't recommend that you watch them because objectionable content, violence, cussing, dialogue. But I'm just saying that if you were to watch a movie that actually had craft and had insight and was dramatically potent or whatever, it would be those.
Yes.
And it would not be Tomorrow War with Chris Pratt.
No. I'll go out on a limb for Warriors. Warriors is pretty great. You have to, or Warrior, yeah.
Yep.
If your mileage may vary with bad language, and I respect that. I myself am I'm not okay with it ultimately, but I'm okay with it in these kinds of movies. For adults, I think Warrior, is a pretty fantastic film.
Yeah. Yep. Kind of amazing cut. Now that's a movie that actually it's amazing to me on some level that it got made like that, because it is just about a dad and about men taking responsibility. That actually is what the tweets or whatever Nathan was reading at the top of this episode. That actually is what this is. What they were saying that Tomorrow War is.
Absolutely. If I thought that Lore TV, people always ask me about Lore TV, given the kinds of podcasts we do, people want to know, are we excited about Lore TV? No, because I read tweets like that one and I'm like, okay, so I'm going to get a bunch of Tomorrow Wars. Now, I might be being cynical and I would love for Lore TV to surprise me, but I'm not holding my breath because I just don't see a lot of good things being done by Christian. The Daily Wire did their movie and it was not that they're Christian exactly, but conservatives. And it was some generic school shooting, shoot 'em up kind of diehard thriller that looked thoroughly feminist and thoroughly garbage.
Oh, that thing.
Yeah. I forget what. Run, Hide, Fight, I think that was called.
Run, Fight, Hide,
Run,
maybe?
Fight, Hide.
I don't know.
Run, Live, Die, Repeat.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I read that. Didn't we read something about the content of that movie? And it was appalling. Even for a normal action movie I'd want to watch. It was
it looked
nudity and
violent and
perverse.
Whatever it was, it did not look like, yay, the conservatives are finally running the ship and righting the ship. I mean, we've just got to have higher standards, I think.
Yeah.
And part of that involves not giving a pass to monopoly money. And just, I think part of the reason we do it, I've already said this in different ways on this podcast, but I think one of the reasons we do it is because we're so insecure. We want some movies about fatherhood. We see fatherhood being attacked everywhere. Yeah. And so when somebody comes to us with some, it's like, we're we're so poor, we're starving, and so somebody comes up to us with monopoly money, and we really want to believe that it's real money, but
yeah, we do.
We're not going to be able to buy anything with it. Monopoly money doesn't, it's not real money. It still needs to be real money. Like, it doesn't matter how much you want it to be or how insecure you feel about, being poor, to stick with my analogy. So if you want there to be great Christian art, then one of the things that you can do is not say that the Tomorrow War
is great Christian
art.
Yay.
And I don't know how representative those tweets were of anybody in our circle. I know some friends of ours have watched the Tomorrow War and enjoyed it as schlock. And it could be that many of our listeners were like, oh, yay. It could be that some of them, their reactions were described by those tweets. It could be that they just didn't care one way or another about the Tomorrow War. I don't know, actually.
Sure.
But we have
maybe most people just watched it and it was like, oh, that was kind of a fun alien shoot 'em up movie.
Right.
Fine.
Great.
Cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all for movies where J.K. Simmons is beefed up and puts a pickaxe in an alien's eye.
Sure. Pretty fun.
Yeah. Especially on Amazon Prime. Like, the fact that I didn't pay for a ticket to this helps,
Sure, it does.
I think I'd probably be being a little harder on it if I'd had to pay a ticket, get a babysitter, go out.
Yeah.
This movie would, but we can hold it to a lower standard for, I'm willing to have low standards. Actually, I was willing to enjoy this on the level of an alien shoot 'em up, and insofar as it worked on that level, I did. But once it starts playing in the arena of actual morality, it better be willing to play.
It better be.
All right. Now, is there anything else to say about the Tomorrow War?
I don't think so.
I felt really bad for the actress that played the daughter because she did a great job. The older version of the daughter.
She did do a great job.
She did a great job, and the movie did her a disservice. I felt bad for all the women in this movie. So it's just like, if you wrote them real roles instead of having them bark orders, or even the wife just has this very generic,
super generic.
They give her a couple funny, quote unquote, funny lines later on to just try and give her some personality. But it's just like, for all its faux feminism, this movie doesn't actually care about women enough to write them characters that are at all interesting. It doesn't care about anybody, but if insofar as it does care about anybody, it's Chris Pratt and J.K. Simmons. Like, they get all the good stuff. Actually, the daughter is really, as Ben said, just there to emote about her dad and not to have any kind of functional, like, what? Why is she here? What does she do? Why do people respect her? What's going on? What's the chain of command? Like,
yep.
It's just really boring. I mean, I would think even feminists would want to hold a movie to a higher standard. Surely they're not happy. Like, who's happy with this movie? I don't know why Christians would be happy with it. And I really don't know why progressives would be happy with it either. It tries to split the difference and water everything down. And in doing so, I would think pleases no one.
Yeah.
No, have the courage of your convictions, or, hey, Chris Pratt, have the courage of your lack of convictions, dude. Just be a crass Hollywood star. If that's, I mean, that's what you are. So be it.
Yeah.
Don't lie to me.
Well, lying to conservatives is profitable.
Yes. Well,
Monopoly money turns into cash in the hands of Hollywood executives.
Who was it that said nobody ever went broke, underestimating the stupidity of the American people, or something like that? Sounds like H.L. Mencken or Mark Twain or something like that. I don't know who said it, but sadly, it describes. Hey, I'm sure there's many places in my life where I've accepted monopoly money. I'm not trying to be too. I mean, I am trying to be judgy. I do think it's stupid that people supported this movie in any way, shape, or form. But I'm sure there are places where I'm like, I so much want this to count as something moral that I'm just going to accept it. I'm sure, I'm not going to be able to think of an example off the top of my head. We all do it, but
we all do it.
Let's try not to do it. Okay, so Ben, how many pickaxes in an alien's eye out of 7 do you give the Tomorrow World?
I don't know. It depends on how I'm trying to think of it.
Tomorrowsburg.
I'll give it 3.5.
3.5. So it's exactly halfway up to.
Yeah. That's what I'll do.
A failing grade. 50% is.
It is, but I don't know. I don't know how to think of it. Maybe, you know what? I'm just going to go and give it 3. I'm taking away that extra half a pickaxe.
I would give it 3.5 as an action movie because I'd say for about half the running time I was entertained on a very rudimentary level.
That's fair.
As any kind of thoughtful examination of anything really, of an alien invasion, I would give it, I don't know, 1 or 2 pickaxes.
Yeah, that's fair.
At most.
Mine was more of a combined rating or something.
Yeah, well, okay, so if I'm going to combine it, then I think I'll actually get your rating. You just did all the math without taking our listeners through it.
Sure, I guess so, yeah.
Because it's like 4 for action, or it's like, I get a 3, because it'd be like 2 for thoughtfulness and 3.5 for, anyway.
Yeah, something like that. Something like that.
So this movie gets 3 pickaxes. And I do hope we live to see the day when there's a giant poster of the Tomorrow War, and it says 3 pickaxes, Sanity at the movies.
Maybe we will.
Knowing those slimy Hollywood producers, though, they'll leave out the context and make it sound like 3 pickaxes was a really good rating.
Really good rating. Yeah, they will.
Well, speaking of good rating, I like to rate people, specifically patrons, and I find them all whatever the opposite of wanting is.
Right.
I find them all having. I guess
that's right.
Someone doesn't want, then someone has.
Someone has.
And specifically, our Patron Choice Award of Awesomeness recipient for today's episode, Seth. Now, describe Seth's awesomeness to us, Ben.
Seth has the awesomeness of an alien invasion that wipes out entire continents, and it's really hard to stop. You have to go to the source and stop it, otherwise it's too late.
Right.
It's that kind of explosive, sudden power.
Yep. Seth puts a pickaxe in the eye of stupidity.
Yeah, to mix our metaphors a little.
Yeah.
To mix our Tomorrow War drawn metaphors.
Seth is both an alien invasion and the pickaxe
that stops them. Yep.
Seth is at war with himself.
Huh.
And that war is awesome.
Wow. Suddenly this got really deep.
Yes, this is
fairly schlocky, actually.
Yeah. Every time Seth thinks he's living on a peaceful planet, there's an alien invasion in his soul. But he puts the pickaxe in the eye of,
wow.
of that invasion.
Seth lives a very tense life in that case.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like Chris Pratt.
Never a dull moment.
never a dull moment. It's like the anti-Chris Pratt. No, Seth's awesome. And yep, as awesome as an alien invasion, as awesome as a pickaxe. And that's all that needs to be said about the Tomorrow War. I will never think about it again. I dare say you will never think about it again.
Try not to.
And this podcast will just sit on our feed, and every once in a while somebody will listen to it and be like, huh, I guess that was a thing that happened. Glad they coined that Monopoly money metaphor that's gone on to be such a popular meme that's swept across our nation and changed the way that people understand morality.
Good.
This is where it all happened.
Right here.
The Tomorrow War. Well, until next time. Go to patreon.com/sanity at the movies. Hear all our reviews of Loki. Hear us read the script for the rejected Star Wars Episode 9. Hear us review lots and lots of Clone Wars. Hear us... I think we're going to read the script for Frank Darabont's Indiana Jones, which would be pretty fun. Rejected Indiana Jones script. That's pretty famous. So just a lot of fun over at the Sanity at the Movies Patreon. That's patreon.com/Sanity at the Movies. And until next time,
I'm sorry for everything.
You should be, Chris Pratt.